Hey, welcome to Stay Healthy Knoxville. I'm excited for our episode today. I have Dr. Tommy Lane on our show. Dr. Tommy, he is the clinic director here at Simply Physio. He's a graduate from UT Knoxville as far as undergraduate, and he went on to get his doctorate in physical therapy from South College. He
Mhm.
also is certified in dry needling and a certified nutritional specialist here. We're super excited about having him on the show and understanding some of his background and really get what got him started and gleaning from some of his expertise. So welcome to the show, Dr. Tommy.
Yeah, thank you, John Mark. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, well, as viewers are listening, we love to have you start from the very beginning of take us back and what drew you into the field of physical therapy. Was there a certain story or event
Mhm.
that really introduced you to the field, or got you thinking that you
Mhm.
may want to become a physical therapist?
Yeah, so I was actually admitted to UT as an advertising major. A lot of people don't know that, and I went in and before I even got to my freshman year, I changed my major because I played rugby for many years, and with that sustained quite a few injuries and had a lot of bumps and bruises that I had to rehab, and so I was in and out of physical therapy from different injuries, for a cumulative total of like a year, just when I was in high school. And I remember I was at physical therapy and I was sitting with the physical therapist that was working with me, and I said that I was admitted to UT as an advertising major. And she said, "Oh, I think my husband works in advertising." And I said, "Oh, that's so interesting." I started asking questions like, "Who's his biggest client?" And she said, "Visine." I just had like a little existential crisis of like, do I want to grow up and have my life's work be making eye drop commercials? And it didn't resonate with me. And so I started, soul searching a little bit, started thinking. And I looked back on and reflected on how impactful physical therapy was for me and getting me my sport back, getting my daily life back, and how important that was for me. Because I remember at one point I was 16 or 17 years old and I had a hip injury, and my family was on vacation. We went to Gatlinburg, and we were gonna go walk the strip of Gatlinburg up and down. And I remember thinking, oh man, like that's gonna suck. I gotta walk a really long way. And I was not even 18 years old. And I remember thinking how awful that felt. And but physical therapy was the thing that was able to give that back to me. Like I went through PT, did the whole bout, and I got better, and I got back to walking fine and playing fine. Went on to play rugby at UT, and had more injuries there too, but and did more PT. But it was so impactful for me that I thought, how cool would it be to be able to be in that same position and give that back to other people, no matter what it is they want to do. I found that really rewarding. And so it
Yeah,
led me down the path, and years later, here we are.
yeah, awesome. So yeah, that was similar path for me is some sport. I was introduced through my own injuries
Hmm.
and playing soccer growing up in high school and really enjoy being around the clinic and the field and understanding. So yeah.
It's a,
Yeah, thank you.
it's,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say it's a common pathway you'll hear in the PT world. We all end up
Yeah.
broken athletes and find our way to PT.
And usually it's like, okay, like you go to a course and you're like, okay, can I be the volunteer because I'm still working on myself, right?
Yeah, yeah. We're all works in project.
Yeah. So what really part of your career, what do you remember most about? Maybe kind of take us back to your first kind of treating your first few patients
Oh,
and maybe things
terrified.
that you learned. Well, if you think about like as a young clinician, like are there certain things that you think about differently now than you did back then as far
Oh
as
God,
as
I mean, everything.
yeah.
I mean, it's a as a young PT. I mean, the when you're in PT school and you're learning, it's all pretend. It's all tests and fake patients, and There's no real stakes in the end. And then when you have that first patient that's looking at you, and especially early in the career, and that first patient that's looking at you saying, I'm in genuine pain, I'm in trouble, like my life is affected, and they're looking to you as the expert to then get them better. There's that when you're first out of school, it's terrifying. You're like, oh my God, I'm gonna double check everything. I'm gonna go home and do research. Like it's then you kind of have to because you're still learning in a way.
Yeah.
But over the years, I mean, build so much confidence and see patterns and talking about how it's different now. Um, the one thing I would say now is that there's a reason they call medicine practice, and why how many years of practice you've been in. And I think a lot of that is because as a student and when you're a young therapist, you think it's all very black and white. Like, oh, you have X, I treat you with Y. Like it's just very linear, binary. Then when you start really treating people and actually understanding the problems and doing those treatments and seeing failures of some treatments, you have to realize that it's more shades of gray, that every patient is different and that every patient responds differently. And I mean, we even see in studies, we see studies all the time that back this up as well. And that every person really is different. And so it's almost like every single evaluation that you get, it's a bit of an experiment, because we know I've treated, hundreds and thousands of people, with different conditions and I've treated all of them a little differently because every person is just that little bit different. It's
Yeah.
generalities, generally I'm gonna do roughly the same thing. And for whatever condition you have, but yeah, everyone does respond so differently. So you have to put on your thinking cap every visit and make sure you're doing what's best for that patient in front of you, not just what's best for, what you have on paper.
Yeah. Well, maybe thinking back on patients that you've made a real impact, is there any certain patient in particular that comes to mind, maybe a success story that stood out to you, really stuck with you, kind of just emotionally? Anything that come to mind?
Yeah, I think there was one that really stuck with me, and it was a good lesson, in terms of learning about people, but also learning about pain science. That's a route that I like to treat a lot of my patients with and educate them about is the science behind why we hurt. And I had a patient come to me, and she had knee osteoarthritis. She was in her late 60s. She was a widow. And she came to me because she went to an orthopedic surgeon, and orthopedic surgeon said, she's got the quote bone on bone, and it's the worst he's ever seen. And it wasn't, and she was very, distraught by that news. And he said, you need a knee replacement, but she had no one at home to help care for her with that knee replacement. So she's on her own. So she was out of options and she couldn't do the things she wanted to do anymore. And so she came to me as a last resort. She basically said, like, I don't know what else I can do, like if you can't help me. And and so I did my evaluation and I dug into it and I looked at the knee and I did all my, ligamentous tests, some arthritic tests, and my muscular tests, and I found that I didn't really think that her knee joint itself was actually the main contributing factor to her pain. A lot of that was some muscular irritation on the inside of her knee. And I mean, she came in limping. I mean, it was 10 out of 10 pain at times,
Yeah.
um, and I found, and I told her that I was like, hey, I actually think that a lot of the pain is not coming from the joint, it's coming from these muscles here. And I explained the anatomy and I explained how it can hurt and why, and talked to her about that and immediately gave her so much more hope than she'd ever had. Like she thought she was just doomed. And I showed her a few stretches, a few basic exercises, and literally her next visit, she came in, she says, I'm basically pain free. She's like, I haven't, and it's been years. It was like 4 or 5 years of this pain. She's like, I'm pain free, for the first time
Yeah.
in years. And is that me being magic and waving my magic hands over her knee and
Yes.
making her yeah, yes, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. Yes, yeah. I'm also a wizard. Yeah. But like realistically, no, it wasn't that. It was me giving her some exercises, but giving her hope and letting her
Yeah.
know, hey, what you find on imaging does not dictate what's actually going on in your knee, and it's not going to dictate how I'm going to treat you. I'm going
Yeah.
to do my own evaluation, figure out what's going on, and but it was also a lovely, lesson in pain science. Pain is very complex, and you could spend a whole 3 month lecture, talking about pain science, but pain's extremely complex, and um, you know, just for her, letting her know that I think it's going to be okay, and
Yeah.
and giving her some things to work on that pain, it made a world of difference for her, and so it's very important I find to reassure my patients that, total honesty of what's going on in my head, how do I think I'm going to help them, and let them know where I'm at with that. And I don't use verbiage like bone on bone and worst I've ever seen,
Right.
I also don't do that. So, but yeah, but that was one that really stuck with me.
Yeah. A little disclaimer for those that are listening. So Tommy's a really good therapist, but his success and having that dramatic response is not a guarantee in your results.
I can't
Obviously,
wave my magic hands all the time. Yeah.
right. No, Tommy is a great therapist though, but I think, there's a lot to be said though that of when somebody has, at least some level of hope. And if they're coming in for a visit, it tells us that maybe they're skeptical or maybe they have doubts, which is very normal. But if they show up, there's still some level of intrigue, curiosity, and I'll call that some level of hope. And if we have a little bit of that, if you can foster that and grow that, there's some beautiful things that can happen, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
So. Um, well, I'm making a little bit of shifts, like as kind of going as more towards today. Like when you think about your we'll call it treatment philosophy.
Hmm.
For patients that are or interested patients that are listening to the podcast, like how do you kind of view treatment? Like, do you have a general philosophy
Hmm.
that you lean towards, as you're
Hmm.
going about constructing a plan or commencing physical therapy for someone?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the main function and metric that I'd like to look for is what are their main goals? Like, what do they want from physical therapy? Like I've had patients come in with some pretty serious objective findings that are really kind of scary, like it's pretty serious stuff. And then um, in my mind, the PT mind for me is going, okay, well, this needs to be better. This objective finding I would like to improve upon. But then you find that that's not their real main metric. It's, well, I don't really care about this thing. Maybe I can't bend my knee all the way or get my elbow just all the way straight or whatever it is, they want to play with their kids. They want to, throw the ball with their son. They want to, go on a hike again, whatever it is. And so I really try to tailor my treatments behind what the main goal of that person is. A lot of the times it's pain. Like most of my patients come to me because they want their pain to be lesser or gone. And
Yeah,
so that is usually the metric that we're working on is just making their pain better with their day-to-day function. But then still looking at like what makes you tick as a person. Like what is it like if I took away these three activities, like what would that really like hurt you if that happened? And so how can I give that back to you? Like how can I get you back to those activities,
yeah,
whatever makes you you. And so getting them at least to that point, but then I really like to see if we can't get above that point as well. And so there's one thing about, taking the pain away. That's great. That's wonderful. My patients come in all the time and they tell me like, hey, I've had the first week of, last 4 years that have been pain free. And that's always a awesome visit. But then I kind of have to remind them it's kind of like if you've taken an antibiotic dose pack, that you start feeling great on day 3, but you got 5 days of pills,
hmm
it's the same concept with PT in that, okay, we're feeling pain free, but now how do we keep that pain from coming back? Like, how do I future proof you? A course, or an education group that I like to take continuing education from is called the Institute of Clinical Excellence, and they have a phrase that I'll steal that I really like, and it's called one rep max living. And so a lot of people they are basically living at their one rep max. And the one rep max for people that don't know is if you're in the gym, how much weight can you lift with this certain movement, the absolute maximum, And basically, our bodies are designed to lift as much as we need to. That's why if you do strength training, the muscles get bigger, you get stronger. You do hard things, the body adapts to it. But if we're not doing those hard things and we're not, really challenging the body, it's not going to get to that certain level of strength and that certain threshold. And basically, you're living every day at your one rep max because that's the most you've ever challenged your body to do. And so, how can I improve that top threshold? How can I make you not live at your one rep max, but you're living below that point to where, picking up your kid or reaching for something in the back seat is not going to hurt you. It's not going to aggravate you because you're so much stronger than that baseline function of just your everyday tasks.
yeah,
And so that's kind of where I like to get people to, is where they're not one rep max living.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're describing kind of how to make a more resilient body to
100%. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
improve its ability to handle demands,
Hmm.
and we have to train it to become more resilient. So that
Yeah.
way, one simple lift of a child or a grandchild doesn't bring them to their knees, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, are there any certain things that you find that patients have misunderstandings about recovery?
Yeah, first is that they think it's going to be easy, and they think it's going to be linear, right? A lot of people think that
Hmm.
it's pretty simple that you come in, once or twice a week, and I'll wave my magic hands again, and then people get better. But it's homework. Like I always tell my patients the most important thing about their recovery is the home exercise plan and trying to get the right recipe of what homework, what things are you doing at home that I prescribe to you, very specific exercises and the movements that are going to get you better. Like that's one of the most important things. And then the other thing is that it's linear. A lot of people think that, with physical therapy, just every day is just going to be better and better and better. And a lot of people it is, but you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have some wobbles. You're going to have some speed bumps. You're going to have,
Yeah.
maybe we're 3 weeks into a 6 week plan of care and they come back in, they say, I don't know why, but I felt worse the past 2 days. And we'll look into it. Usually it's because, well, maybe you didn't sleep well the night before and you went on for a extra long hike, or, or whatever it was. But you're going to have some speed bumps along the way, and that's normal. I would say 98% of my patients all have speed bumps like that. It's kind of weird when a patient gets better every single visit. That's
Yeah.
unusual. I'll take it. I'm happy with that, but it's not the norm.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Tommy. With interested to since you've worked in a few different settings,
Hmm.
what is it? Here at Simply Physio, we work with one patient at a time, so that means we
Hmm.
can focus on our patient in front of us the whole
Hmm.
session. What does that do for you as a physical therapist that allows you to maybe treat differently? Like, why is that an advantage to you and maybe to the patient?
Yeah, I think to answer that, I can kind of tell you about the other models that I've been in. So I mean, I've my first job out of PT school, I was in a model where it was multiple patients an hour. That's most physical therapy clinics. The vast majority of PT clinics are going to be a multi-patient model, to where one physical therapist will be handling two to even seven. Like certain clinics will handle up to 7 or 8, nine even patients an hour.
Yeah,
And with that, you have to divide your attention between those patients, and the more patients you have, the more you have to divide that attention, and so the worse it gets. And so you start missing things. You start, you can't really control all their movements with the exercises. You don't have as much time for hands-on manual therapy, any special treatments like dry needling or shockwave. You don't have the time for those things. And so it really does just dilute the experience and dilute how much you can give. And here at Simply Physio, we don't have that. And so it really does kind of unshackle the physical therapist. And I stand by that a one-on-one model is the gold standard of physical therapy. This is how physical therapy should be done, because I mean, we are medical, providers, and we're providing a medical service. And I think with that, we need to really be as dialed in as possible and as attentive as possible. And it allows me to see more things than I would normally, and catch
yeah,
more things than I would normally. Um I mean, because we're human still, we're smart, but we still can make mistakes. And so having as fewer distractions as possible means I'm so much less likely to make those mistakes. Because I had patients in my first job when, I mean, I would be 4 weeks into the plan of care, and then I would watch them do a movement and realize it's been wrong the whole time, or they were doing this compensatory mechanism and all sorts of different things. And I would just, bonk myself in the head like I should have caught that earlier. But it's hard to
yeah,
blame yourself when you've got to handle 50 other people, And here, I just don't have that problem. Like I catch those things early on. I don't have as many head bonking moments because I'm like, oh yeah, no, I've saw this on day one and day two and day three. Like I've caught all this,
yeah,
and it's also easy to pivot too. If a patient's not making progress, then we're very easily able to say, hey, well, you know what, next session we're flipping gears. We're going to try this, we're going to go this different direction. And so we're a lot lighter on our feet in that way. We don't have to steer this entire crew of techs and PTAs to and athletic trainers to all go in the same direction. I can just immediately make a change.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that gets me is, somebody's had physical therapy that didn't help, and
Hmm.
they can come away with the conclusion that physical therapy in general is not the answer for me.
Yeah.
And I don't fault them at all because they don't really understand or appreciate that there's different types of physical therapy and different
Yeah.
models. And our goal and hope is that when somebody comes in, that we can obviously that we can help people, but at the very least that we can say like, hey, we've given you the full opportunity. There's been no excuses within what we have been able to offer for you to not have success. And sometimes again,
Hmm.
it's not the right, they may not, we can't guarantee their success, but we know we can't blame it on the model
Hmm.
of maybe a diluted kind of form of PT. That we can
Hmm.
really give them the full opportunity, to reach their health goals
Hmm.
and find success in a conservative means through the model that we offer.
And I think to piggyback off that, like you said, I mean, no practitioner can guarantee success unless they're lying to you, you know. But
Yeah,
but I think here the difference is that we can guarantee you that this is the best bet that you have,
yeah.
because it really is. I mean, there's nowhere else like this.
Yeah. Well, maybe take us in with any listener that's interested in, working with you, thinking about just that first session. A
Hmm.
lot of people can come into that first session, obviously, with a bit of uncertainty,
Hmm.
maybe some skepticism, maybe some doubt, maybe just some nervousness. So maybe kind of walk us through like when somebody's in your room for the first time, what are you hoping to get out of that session?
Yeah, yeah. So for me, my evaluations are a lot of talking. There's a quote that really stuck with me. It was a really talented physical therapist, and I'm forgetting his name. And it might have been a physician as well. I forget, but either way, he said, "Shut up and listen. The patient is telling you the diagnosis." And so that's what I do a lot is I shut up and listen, and I have the patient tell me their whole story. I want to hear, where the issue started, how it started, how it's progressed, what bothers them, what makes it better. Like I want to get as much detail as possible. I'll spend 20 to 30 minutes just talking to a patient, you know. There's many times, I mean, most people in their physician's office, they're in and out in 5 minutes, and 5 minutes is just my greeting usually. We're just chit-chatting
Yeah.
and then we really dig into it. And then I'll spend the rest of the time, so now I have this, usually about 80% of an idea of what's going on just based on what the patient told me. And then I'll spend the rest of the time trying to confirm or deny that with my objective testing. And so we'll do range of motion testing, we'll do strength testing. I'll have special tests depending on, the condition that is going on. I'll go through all of that, and then meld all that information together and see if I can, synthesize everything and figure out what is going on, how severe is it, and then come up with a plan that works around that person's life. Because, good examples, like I have a patient and he has extremely chronic plantar fasciitis, 25 years plus, and he finally just gave in. He was like, I've got to do something about it, and came to me. And but he's also a woodworker and he's building a deck, and so that's not easy on the foot and the plantar fascia. And so it's been, we had to design a game plan around him building his deck, because I'd asked him, I was like, is that take a pause, does that have to continue, what is it? He said that the deck has got to get built, that's not stopping me. He's like, and you can't say anything to stop me. So I said, understood, we're gonna we're gonna work around that. And so we've come up with a tailored plan that's a little unique, um to work around him literally building his deck. And I've had patients that they come in and they say, they've torn their ACL and they've had surgery for their ACL, and then they've got a big trip coming up, and on paper it seems like, wow, you may not be ready for that trip, so we ramp it up, and we go a little more aggressive, we go a little beyond the standard, just to make sure that we can get them ready for whatever that trip is. And so I really try to listen as much as I can, and then confirm or deny what we find, and then let's design a plan around your life, not just what was on paper.
Um, what can a patient expect to kind of leave with, if you will,
Yeah.
after wrapping up that exam?
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I like to conduct my initial evaluations is that at the end of our evaluation, after I figure out what's going on and we've kind of come up with a plan, I will always give patients exercises because, like I said earlier, the most important thing is the recipe of home exercises. Like, what are the right movements for you to be doing, and at what frequency, at what dosage. And I oftentimes don't do too much hands-on treatment. That's just my personal style. That's the way I like to treat, is that the first visit, I like to send you home with some exercises of things that I think are going to make a difference, and have you report back that second visit and let me know if or not that did help. Because that's going to be really helpful in me, confirming my diagnosis, and then also confirming whether or not the plan that I had formulated is actually going to be making a big difference. And then on that second visit, we will get into some hands-on therapy. I'll do some joint mobilizations. We'll do some dry needling, possibly some shockwave, some whatever we need to do to get you better. But that first visit, people usually walk out with a lot of education, right? They're going to know exactly what's going on. I usually show people on a chart or diagram the anatomy of what's going on. Hopefully I can explain it as thoroughly as possible, and they get home exercises to then treat that condition, and then just reporting back on that second one about how well they did with that and if it made any change.
If somebody was on the fence, maybe they're considering coming in, but they're just not quite sure if it's right for them.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, what would your kind of advice be to them?
Yeah, I mean, I understand that, coming into physical therapy and going into a new space and talking to a provider, they're wondering like, is it the right place? Is it something that I really need to do? I always tell people that you literally have nothing to lose, right? We keep our evaluations very accessible for everyone. And the worst you're going to come out with is a lot of education. The worst thing that happens is that you learn more about your body. And that's the absolute minimum that you're going to leave with. And it's always worth exploring too, because here's the other thing. I'm not going to offer a surgery. I'm not going to offer a pill. I'm not going to offer an injection. I'm not doing any of that stuff. And
Yep,
so, nothing that I do is going to be possibly harmful for you. Like, you're
yep,
you're not going to be harmed by anything I do. Everything I do is going to be gradual and productive for you, and non-invasive. And so, because if you go to a physician and you say my back hurts and they say, oh, well, let me give you this injection. Well, what if they miss? You don't want that. And so, you don't have that worry with me.
yep,
And so, yeah, there's nothing to lose by coming in and just having a conversation. That's
yep,
at worst you lose an hour of your day, and hopefully
yep.
still walk away learning more than you did before.
Right. I think most people too is just recognizing that indecision is a decision.
Hmm.
If you're deciding to avoid or not commence care, then you are like that is like a decision. So if you're not happy with where you are, like for whatever reason, then
Hmm.
ultimately there needs to be some sort of actionable step in a direction somewhere. And I think what you're saying is like the most kind of the safest, the most conservative, first step to make is working with somebody like you who looks to heal the body naturally, holistically, tap
Hmm.
into the body's ability to heal itself just with some
Hmm.
guidance and some help.
That's kind of you can even sum up. That's what physical therapy does, is we stimulate the body to just heal itself, and it's
Yeah,
convincing the body to do that. With I mean, a good example is like a rotator cuff tendinopathy. The muscles in the shoulder, they get irritated over years, and having some damage to them. The body has no incentive to heal that until you convince it to do so. And so what's
yeah,
that's with specific stretches, specific exercises, dry needling, shockwave, you name it, like all those
yeah,
things that can help convince the body it needs to fix itself. And
yeah.
that's how we do it.
Now you've mentioned a few treatments. Just want to clarify for the audience, maybe just a brief explanation what they are and how you
Hmm.
might use them. One of them is dry needling. You
Hmm.
mind
Yeah.
explaining just to our audience what that is and how you might use it?
Yeah. So the a long story short of dry needling is that they are single filament needles. So there's no injection. There's no hollow opening. It's a solid needle. They're the same needles as acupuncture needles, actually, but we use them in a much different methodology. And so, depending on what's going on and depending on the condition that we're treating, we use them for different reasons. But in general, dry needling will increase blood flow to an area. it will actually reduce irritability, like neural irritability. It raises what's called the pain sensory threshold. And so if it takes this much stimulus to feel pain, and walking gets it to right here, maybe a little bit above it, we can actually raise that threshold stimulus to about there,
which is
and
a
so
good
you can
thing.
do more with less pain, which is a good thing. Yeah, which is a good thing.
That's a good thing,
And
just to clarify.
yeah, it is a very good thing. And then the last one is that it can actually help improve muscular extensibility. So it can actually help loosen the muscle. So if you have a really tight muscle, maybe a trigger point in that muscle, we can actually force it to relax a little bit and improve the extensibility of it. There's other mechanisms that go on, but
Yeah,
they're a little more detailed, nuanced. Those are the big three that
yeah.
accomplish most of the goals we need.
Another one you mentioned, maybe just a brief explanation of what it is and how you might use it. Did you mention a few times shockwave?
Yeah, so Shockwave is it's been around since about the 80s, but it's only been the past about 10 years that it's been adopted in physical therapy practices. But it is a basically heavy acoustic wave. So it's a kinetic energy. And those acoustic waves are then transmitted into the body via an applicator. And those heavy sound waves basically cause little sonic booms in the tissue. And that can actually kind of it's so noxious and intense in a way that it can actually restart the healing process. It can actually tell the body like, hey, we have got to fix this. And so that's why it's actually most effective for chronic tendinopathies like plantar fasciitis, tennis elbow, any sort of tendinopathy like that that has been around for a long time and the body's almost given up on it,
Mhm.
this can help restart that healing process.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Now,
Yeah, of course.
I know you also have a certification in nutrition.
Hmm. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how, like, why you went and worked through that certification and
Hmm.
how you use that in practice.
Yeah, so nutrition is such an important, aspect of recovery for so many of my patients. And it's simple things, like I'm not to the level of a dietitian, like, but I'm not going to prescribe a diet to then treat like diabetes or multiple sclerosis or anything like that. But what I am going to be able to do is be able to have a patient come in and then discuss with them good eating habits and things that we maybe ought to take out of our diet that might be pro-inflammatory, that might be aggravating their pain, making things feel worse, and maybe not giving them enough of like the basic fundamental nutritious, building blocks that we need to build things up. We're made up of millions of proteins and collagen and all sorts of different stuff. And so if we're not giving our body the right building blocks with rehab, it's almost like doing nothing. Like you'll see this a lot of time in the gym community. Guys they'll lift and they'll lift and they'll lift and they'll lift and they'll just be like 5 to 6 days a week. But if they're not getting the right diet, if they're not getting the right sleep, if they're not getting all those other variables right, it's almost for nothing. And rehab is no different. If a patient's coming in and we're giving them all the right exercises, but their diet looks like crap, then it's going to be a lot harder to make those changes. And I found that my patients that I'm able to make some dietary changes with, just subtle changes here and there, may adding something, maybe taking something away, they get better a lot quicker. And so
Yeah.
it's a simple thing and it's better for you usually. I'm going to guide people through just a general healthy diet. And I find that that's really useful. So I got that certification because I wanted to learn more and I wanted to be able to actually, have some backing to be able to give this information to my patients and some credibility.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think that's just a testimony to kind of appreciating that, for healing to take place, that we have to consider the whole picture, right?
Hmm.
And that's kind of the specialty of what we do as physical therapists and working here at Simply Physio is oftentimes we can zoom out a little bit more than maybe, what an orthopedist, specialist in the shoulder would do.
Hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, those fields, like we need, like if you need to have surgery, you want somebody who specializes in the surgery that you need, right?
Hmm.
But if you're looking to avoid surgery, there's an appreciation that oftentimes we have to, treat the whole system, right? Instead of
Hmm.
just one little piece of tissue.
Hmm. Yeah, there was an analogy given by one of my PT professors, and it basically said something along the lines of a plant. You can water a plant all you want, but if it's not in the light, it doesn't matter, you know.
Hmm.
And so we might be the water. We're given the things that it needs, but if you're not getting the other things, like the light, like the good sleep, good nutrition,
Yep.
it doesn't really matter.
Yep. Now, you also are a clinic instructor, right, for
Hmm.
other students, student physical
Hmm.
therapists. Tell us a little bit
Hmm.
of why you enjoy teaching and instructing
Yeah.
kind of even young aspiring soon-to-be therapists.
Yeah, I find it very fun. I remember some when I was in PT school, kind of reflecting back on my own experiences and had some clinical instructors that I really liked and had some that I really didn't, and kind of learning, what really helped me and what didn't. And also being at such a vulnerable time in that young clinician's career and that they're growing and they're learning and your clinicals can be so transformative, I guess, and
Yep.
informative. I guess the word I'm looking formative for the way that they're going to practice whenever they get out. And I hope to instill an understanding of what the standard of care needs to be at for those therapists um and everything, and hopefully giving them all the tools they need to succeed in finding exactly what it is so that way they can go out into the world and then make a bigger change and hopefully looking at the specifics of what they may be lacking, and trying to really work on those weak points, and then congratulate the strong points, but really making sure that young therapist, because I mean it's so challenging whenever we mentioned it earlier, but when you first start seeing a patient on your own, no one else is there to help you. It's very daunting, and so giving them as many tools that they need to then go forth and then face that first patient and that first year of practice, which is also very challenging. um, I just find it very valuable, and I find it very fun sometimes, And so,
Yep.
but yeah, it's enjoyable.
Awesome. Well, a little shift in gear now as we start to wrap up. What's something people may not know about you outside the clinic?
Yeah, so I'm a huge Formula One fan, like too much so, like it's probably an unhealthy addiction at this point. But so if anybody's a big fan of the 2026 regulations, you can talk to me during our session. We'll hash it out.
Have you
But I'm a
been to a
big Formula
race?
One fan. I'm actually going again in October, so I'm gonna be
Okay.
I went to the race in Austin in 22, and then I'm going back again in this year in 26. And it's a ton of fun. I've been a motorcycle nerd for years. I'm a hobbyist mechanic, I guess you could say, working on my motorcycle and I have a 1996 F-150, and so that thing has some projects it needs done. And so big gearhead. I love that stuff. And so yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. So,
Yeah.
what I like to leave with our listeners. So, if you have one piece of advice just to help people stay healthy, what would it
Hmm.
be?
Get better sleep. That's like such an underutilized thing. Obviously eating healthy, getting exercise, all that stuff. But we're learning more and more with research and seeing how poor everyone's sleep is, that how important good sleep is. And it's relatively easy to get to set yourself up in the right environment to get good sleep.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the easiest, most straight. You do it every night anyways. And so why not do it a little bit better? And the health benefits that come with that are staggering. And yeah, I mean psychological too. And so yeah, get good sleep.
Awesome. All right. And then I always end with the same three questions here to wrap up the show. The first one is, what's your favorite restaurant here around Knoxville?
See, I'm such a foodie. That's another thing that to know about me, as I'm a huge foodie. So it's really hard for me to pick a favorite, but top of my head would have to be Amelia in Market Square. It's an Italian restaurant. And you got to get the pine nut pasta. They make a pine nut pasta that I have not been able to recreate because it's just,
Hmm.
I don't know what they do, but incredible. So, um, probably Amelia. It's always a good time.
Okay. I'll have to try that one. Um, and then what about a favorite spot, maybe around Knoxville when you got some free time to go explore, hang out?
Ooh, another one that's also really challenging. Honestly, I think IAMS. I love IAMS, especially the quarry over at IAMS. Like a hot summer day.
Hmm.
And I think what's the formal name of the quarry? I forget. But either it's the
Meads Quarry.
Meads Quarry.
Is
Meads
that
Quarry.
Meads?
Yeah, so Meads
Yeah,
Quarry. Yeah. And so I go over there and paddleboard around, and that's like a little hidden gem of a place, and
nice.
it's always really peaceful and nice.
Okay, and then the last question. This is more something that you have not done, like a bucket list item,
Hmm.
something that you're hoping to do soon, to experience maybe around Knoxville or greater East Tennessee area.
Yeah, and so in the I don't know. The first one I go to is I don't know if it sounds silly, but making a Trans-America motorcycle trip. That's always been a bucket list. I want to do a coast to coast. So
Okay.
I've done a few long trips. I've done 1,000 miles in a day up to northern Michigan. It's called an iron butt. But I would love to do like a Vermont, Maine to Los Angeles, San
Yeah.
Diego. All the way across the country, see all the biomes change. And but that's one day. That's gonna be a 2-weeker. I'm gonna need some time off, John Mark. Yeah.
Okay. I thought you said one day you do it in one day at first.
Oh God, no. Oh no, there's no way. No, that's like
I would think so.
that's
That's
insane.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My 1,000-mile trip because of rain and breakdowns and everything took 22 and a half hours. We don't need to I'd be looking at 38, something like
Certain
that.
death.
Yeah.
Certain
Yeah,
death.
exactly. There's no way I make that. Yeah.
Oh, well, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, Tommy. Thank you for our audience for listening. If you were listening here and are intrigued with Tommy's approach, or would like to get on his schedule, then feel free to visit our website, simplypt.com, to request an appointment here with Dr. Tommy. Thank you, Dr. Tommy, for sharing just your insight and your stories, personality. We appreciate you having you on the team and your leadership as well.
Oh, thank
So,
you, John Mark. This was fun. I appreciate it.
yeah. And so, our listeners and around Knoxville, stay healthy, Knoxville. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.